I mentioned that the collection sort of divides itself into 4 categories. One, of course, are the Colts. Another are the air guns, antique air guns. Another section are patent models related to firearms. The United States government, by the late 1880s, engineering drafting had been perfected to the degree that it was no longer necessary to provide an operating model of your invention to the patent office. Up to that time, that was a requirement, and consequently, the patent office had literally warehouses chock full of these little toy-looking things that represented their invention. And the patent only lasts for 7 years or 14 if you get an extension, so they were just obsolete. What's the government going to do with them? They have a huge sale. And Henry, among many other people, acquired these patent models, and you bought them in huge wooden bins, about 6 feet by 6 feet by 6 feet cubes, and the patent office had simply dumped these things in there and said, yeah, I think these are like firearms, and the next one beside it might be sewing machines, and the next one might be water pumps. And so you bid on these things, and Henry bought several of these large containers, resulting in about 300 of these firearms-related patent models. And at an engineering school, you see that is of interest to us. And the other 4th category that I would generalize as a sort of the sub-collection of Henry's would be the training rifles, the military training rifles. Marksmanship training is in its infancy. In fact, you could say it hasn't been born in 1861, 1865. If the rifle that the infantryman's going to be using in the line is not all that different from the rifle he used in earlier life, perhaps on hunting. So there's a familiarity, et cetera, and it wasn't a concern about drawing a bead on a particular individual. It was volley fire, in essence, by regiment, as you probably know. But post-World War, post-Civil War, we are getting into the age of magazine-fed firearms, rapid-fire firearms, high velocity powders. All of that is changing. So now there is an emphasis, 1880, 1890, 1900, on marksmanship training. Initially, you trained for your marksmanship with the service rifle, but for reasons of economy and others, a whole special type of firearm was developed, sub-caliber, usually 22 caliber, 17 millimeter. Germany, France, Japan, Great Britain, the United States, all of the nations were developing these as training weapons. And that is an area of focus for Henry's collection as well. I'm going to point out a couple of specific pieces that you'll see on exhibit downstairs. One of them, the Artemis Wheeler. The United States Navy, this had been patented in 1818. It's the oldest revolving firearm patent in the United States, 1818. In 1821, the Navy purchases 4 of these things at the incredible expense of $100 a piece to consider to field trial as boarding weapons. There were 2 carbine versions, of which one you see here, and there were 2 long rifle versions. Now, at first glance, you might say, well, that's kind of like a pepper box or a volley fire, but in fact, it's not. You can consider this an elongated cylinder. Each barrel is a chamber and the barrel combined, and it's manually rotated, and each chamber, each barrel, fires individually. It's a flintlock firearm, and it has an automatic priming mechanism. So when you turn the barrel unit, it scrapes off, hopefully without ignition, it scrapes off enough primer for you to then fire your next round. So the Navy experiments with these things in 1821. You know, we're looking for ways to try to keep the British away, and decides they don't really want these things after all. Today, of the original 4 that were acquired, the Smithsonian has 2. They have the other carbine and one of the rifles. And we have one of the carbines, and the other rifle is still out there. So, you know, That you keep, be looking for that. Artemus Wheeler from Massachusetts. But of course, Samuel Colt is going to set up his first factory on the banks of the river in Paterson, New Jersey, and come and bring to market his invention. It's not really appropriate to think of this revolving cylinder firearm as Samuel Colt's invention. Samuel Colt will have the patent, the first patent in England and the United States, but people had been experimenting with cylinder firearms for decades earlier than Colt. But Colt is going to popularize this idea and protect it viciously from anyone else trying to get in on his idea. Colt, in these early years, 1836 to 1840, basically, is going to be making things that look like this, the Patersons. Now, for most firearms collections, firearms museum collections that are on display, if they have one or two of these Paterson Colts, it's the jewel of the collection. And we have 36 of them in our collection. This being one of the finest, it is factory fresh. It is a like new condition. Henry, collecting over a period of 65, almost 70 years, had the opportunity to upgrade, if you will, his collection on numerous occasions. But one of the important things about this era of ball and cap, as you know, is if you can get the piece in its original case with its original accoutrements, as it would have been necessary to have when it would have been used, it's very important to the research and the understanding of the firearm. Here you see the charger that carried the, it was a combined powder flask and carried the balls and would automatically load all of your cylinders simultaneously. Here's the capper, of course a cleaning rod, and combination rammer here. This is a combination tool, rammer and screwdriver and pick under there. And of course the all-important bullet mold and extra cylinder to use. Here's one of the Patersons. This is a first model Paterson, circa 1840. That I'll draw your attention to. It's number 14 downstairs. The reason this is important is because it combines American history, firearms evolution, business, international business, all in one firearm. This Paterson Colt was constantly looking for opportunities to associate himself with newsmakers. He would have been presenting presentation firearms to Mitt Romney and Barack Obama. He didn't care if it would stimulate gun sales. Well, that probably wouldn't, would it? But but you get the point. He was a promoter, an entrepreneur of his project. Well, he goes to he presents this particular firearm to the president of Mexico, a fellow named Canalizio. 1844 is when the presentation is made. Well, in 2 years, well, that firearm represents a force multiplier. You see, you could fire that 6 or 7 times before you need to reload it. And Colt, of course, is making this presentation hoping that the Mexican president is going to take the hint and buy these things for the Mexican army. Well, within 2 years, we are at war with the Mexican army, as you remember, of which we were successful. But imagine had the Mexican president Canalizio taken the hint, bought these things for the Mexican army, and now the Mexican army, every infantryman, instead of firing 1 shot, can fire 6 between loadings. It would have been perhaps a different outcome to that war. Here's an interesting firearm, not a Colt. This is the Porter, Perry Porter. This is one of his earliest of several series of repeating rifles that he's developing. Instead of the cylinder going this way as in a Colt, the cylinder in Porter's goes this way. It's a vertical revolving turret firearm. But the thing that really makes this one special, because the Porters were pretty successful, lots of them were sold in various variations, but the thing that makes this one interesting is, just like Colt, Porter's looking for that big buy from the United States Army. The Army was the mass consumer in those days, not you guys, not me. Walmart didn't exist. The Army wanted 20,000 of something if it was going to buy. So you tried to get the Army contract. Well, to show how patriotic Porter's firearm was, this is actually a magazine feed. This held balls and powder in that little chamber on the top. And to show how patriotic he was, he had this building located in Washington, D.C., engraved on the top of this chamber. That building in Washington, do you recognize what the building that might be? It's a very famous building in Washington. It's the Capitol building, where all the congressmen do whatever it is they do. So he's trying to show how red-blooded he was and how this was going to be a great thing for the Army. Well, they don't buy the Porter either. This is the only known engraved complete Porter in existence. The Smithsonian has one of these, of this model, but theirs doesn't have the engraving or the magazine feed. Here's a guy actually carrying one of those things. So that's what you had to look like if you... Well, we're in the age of, ball and cap. And the 3 Ps, as I tend to tell cadets so they can remember, the primer, the propulsion, and the projectile. The 3 Ps that you have to have in the correct order in order to make these firearms work. Pre-cartridge days. Firearms like this, of which you are very familiar, and I don't have any doubt many of you are far more knowledgeable than I. This is only one aspect of my job, and I don't really consider myself a gun authority. I would like more time to spend with it. But pieces that are a little more obscure than this. Anybody recognize that? It's a Allen and wheel lock. It's a patent 1860, very early cartridge firearm. So that's what's beginning to happen. The late 1850s, incredible period for firearms development. Late 1850s to the 1860s. And we're making that move from cap and ball, the 3 Ps, into fixed ammunition. Allen and wheel lock, Ethan Allen, one of the very prolific inventors of American history. This is one of his. It's a lip fire cartridge. Star revolvers, a brace of them here, somewhat popular in the Civil War. European pieces, a Tranter, in like new condition in its original box. Dean Adams and Dean. I should mention that the Tranters and Dean Adams and Dean, they were imported along with the car, of which this is, K-E-R-R, but pronounced car. They were imported into the United States during the Civil War, but Colt was trying to make his inroads in England as well. Quite honestly, the Tranter and Dean Adams and Deans were never particularly popular. They were used, but they were like fine watches. They were exquisitely manufactured, and they took someone with some knowledge to keep them operational. The car is a far more successful Confederate import. It has, what you can tell here, it has a back lock mechanism, very simple. If it breaks, almost a lock, a blacksmith can fix it for you. So these became sought after in the Confederacy. Colt is trying to make inroads in England as well. He opens a factory there in the 1850s, but really can't compete with these fine pieces that are already established, the established market in England. Colt, in an attempt to get the military, the Marshall contracts, is outfitting his Model 1855s, of which he actually starts developing and creating in 1851, but it's called the 55. We have one of the very earliest ones on exhibit downstairs. It's called the Queen Victoria model because it was at the Crystal Palace exhibition that year of 1851. But he's outfitting these with bayonets, saber bayonets, socket bayonets, and as you know, thousands of them were acquired by the United States government and by private contractors and regiments during the Civil War, but never in great masses. Here's a very proud Union cavalryman carrying a Colt carbine, 55 model. Of course, the Civil War ends, and we've got tens of thousands of these single-shot muzzleloaders in armories all over the nation, and we're moving out of that era because there are multiple firearms. By the way, the revolving cylinder era is coming to an end also, because now we have magazine, lever action, various ways of getting multiple shots more efficiently. But what are we going to do with these stands of tens of thousands of single-shot muzzleloaders that are now becoming obsolete? One of the innovative, in fact, the government sent out requests for inventors to help them solve this problem. One of those folks that addressed this, by the way, this is one of the Colt contract muskets, modeled 63, and one of these guys, Remington, in fact, the Remington Firearm Company said, okay, let's take the forestock and the barrel and even the butt stock. We'll take all of that and we will lock off the lock area, and we will substitute using also the original stock, the butt stock. We'll put a new rolling block breech in there, and voila, you have a breech loading single shot firearm. The United States government did not adopt this idea, but many South American nations did, and Remington bought up these surplus muskets for virtually nothing, converted them, and sold them for a very handsome project to South American armies and navies. And those two firearms, one of the originals and one of the conversions, are on exhibit downstairs. Here's actually the direction that the United States went, that you probably know. Erskine Alien develops the trapdoor mechanism, as it becomes known, 1866. This is his actual patent model for that invention, and it's downstairs on exhibit for you to see. It's this is so-called the ski slope version, and that is going to be refined and ultimately comes out as the model 1873. It's the type of thing Custer's men carried at the Battle of Little Bighorn throughout the Indian War period. Well, those are some of the pieces to look for among the 450 that are on display downstairs. Of the firearms that you'll see downstairs, all are Henry Stewart's with the exception of about 4. And we've filled in certain gaps with other pieces. So we are very proud to have this collection available for you and the nation, and particularly the Cadet Corps, as a point of inspiration for them, as it was for Henry. Because Henry once said that all the time, throughout his career, his secret ambition was to be an instructor at VMI. And I think that he has more than fulfilled that by virtue of this collection being here today. I want to do one other thing before we leave and go downstairs. I'm going to try to get all of you into our firearms vault. So if you could just, to get this little piece of paperwork issue out of the way, if everyone could print and sign their name here on the obvious line, that will get you your passport into that room. And while that's happening, I want to talk about these firearms up here. These are a couple of Henry's firearms that are normally not on exhibit. We do not have a Lamat pistol. That's one of the frequent questions we get. Do you have a Lamat pistol? No, we don't have a Lamat pistol.